Scott Talley coming to you from the worldwide headquarters of Network in Action. We're with Ed Sabo of Sabo Custom Builders. Glad you came in today, Ed. Custom building is one of my favorite topics. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to do a little bit of education for a person that's looking for, that next step where they're going to build their first custom home, maybe. Just to be fully disclosed here, years ago I used to have a partnership in a home building business. I was telling Ed before we started, I can't hang a picture on the wall. So it would have been bad news if I was doing any home building, but had a lot of fun. Loved the industry. Loved the day they pour the concrete. It's such an exciting time for families. So how long have you been in the industry?
Been in the industry since 2007. Worked for another builder in 2009. I started on my own.
Awesome. And the other builder was doing custom homes as well.
High-end custom homes in the Heights.
So you got a little bit of education about how to handle the customer. It can be a pretty stressful purchase. I mean, this is a pretty big decision for people.
It is, yes.
And total service oriented. So we're going to talk a little bit about things. I used to love this. As a consumer, I would ask the question before I got in the business. But don't you just love it when somebody meets you at a social event and says, "What's the square foot price to build a home?"
I get that quite often.
Like they're ordering a pizza.
Yes.
So how do you handle that? What is a square foot? What's the range? What are the things or the dynamics that make a difference?
There truly are so many variables, it's hard to give an exact square foot price. I mean, if you're building out in the suburbs and you're doing the same house over and over, you can get a price per square foot, but it's kind of like asking someone, what's the price of a bag of groceries? It depends what's in the bag, what's not in the bag. So there's a lot of variables. There's a range, and in today's market, we're in that 200 plus range to start. A lot of these are on crawl space, higher end finishes. So
looking at $200 a square foot or so, just if somebody just wants to off the top ballpark. Obviously, like you say though, how many bathrooms and granite and the old number. I'm sure it's changed because I remember when the number we used to quote was $105. We're going back 15 to 18 years, so obviously
a lot's changed in the last few years. There's been commodity prices have gone up quite a bit. Labor shortages. You read about unemployment's down to such a low number. Wages have gone up, and there's just a labor shortage. There's just more demand than there is supply for.
So they're getting more money.
More money for the trades.
Yeah. Talk about pricing while we're on that subject. So when someone approaches you, there's a couple different models, right? I mean, there's a cost plus model. Talk to our audience about that a little bit.
We do not use a cost plus model, and that's usually there's some, industry standards of cost plus typically used in commercial or public work. When we bid our work, we come up with a fixed price and plus allowances.
And you're going to stick to that no matter what.
Yeah, every attorney I've talked to said that there's too many arguments come from a cost plus because there's too much debate on what's a cost, what's the plus, who pays for a mistake, who pays for stolen material. It's hard to define and quantify all that. So
you come up with a price prior to starting the project, and then you're going to give the consumer, you're going to give the customer allowances for different parts of the home, and if they're going to help pick out fixtures and things like that. Is that the way it works?
Correct. And usually when we get a client, we start at the design phase. We start with a budget, and then we design a house to that budget. And with that, along the way, we get a sense of what they're wanting, or we have them pick out their appliance packages, their finishes, whether it's going to be wood floor, engineered floor, things like that. So we have a sense of actual numbers of what they are. A lot of our selections are done prior to going to contract. Gotcha. So we know what those amounts are. So the allowances are realistic numbers.
Do most of your customers come to you with their land already purchased?
Most of the time, yes.
So they've got a neighborhood and a piece of land they bought. Now it's ready to start building. What's the process from the time they first meet with you? Let's say the process, they meet with you, they give you an idea what they want, and you get them a bid back or a drawings, or how does that work?
So typically we meet with the client, we decide if we're a good fit for each other, because it's a long process, and it's like being married, and so it's going to be over a year endeavor to work together. So you want to make sure that you're a good fit for personality wise, and that you have experience with that type of project, and they're going to be comfortable with the process. So that's step one. At that point, we sign a pre-construction services agreement, which basically engages us to start putting their project together. Identify a few architectural designers, let them interview them, find out the best fit for their project, and then go from there. We start the design with the budget in mind. We already know the land price. We set some number for landscaping, porches, sidewalks, fences, et cetera, and then we can focus on the number for the house.
Oh, interesting. So the process from the time that they've met with you, now they've agreed on an architect. So from the time that they agree on an architect, and then you go out and get that approved and permitted, and you're going to get ready to prep for the foundation. What's the time frame of that first phase, would you say?
The first phase is usually pretty quick. Once we get permits, depending on weather, we can start to mobilize within 30 days, and that's assuming
the planning process. The architect typically will take how long?
It's anywhere from 90 days to maybe 180.
Okay.
It depends on how quick clients make decisions.
So the planning phase with the architect or the planner is somewhere 3 to 5 months, and then a month you're ready to ratchet up and get your crews out there. And then we're talking about typically on, say, a 4,500 square foot house, another 8 or 9 months, or another
around 8 or 9 months.
Yeah, so it's a good year process.
Definitely a year process, and in there somewhere we tear down a house typically, or
have something moved.
Move some dirt around.
Yeah, it's a great process. So. Talk to me about the types of homes you guys personally build at Sabo Custom Builders.
We typically build custom homes for clients, and since Harvey, they've all been on crawl space houses, raised foundations. Mm-hmm. We do a couple spec homes that have been on crawl space and slabs, and our typical house is right around 4,000 square feet, 2-story.
And is that because you're primarily inside the loop, or in Houston, or focusing on the heights, or?
We come from the heights, so we're a heights builder, which there's a lot more details typically on the outside of the buildings. We're used to doing porches and finishing those, what I'd say, properly, and the details, the corbels, etc., on the outside of the house. So that's, I guess, pretty standard. Raised houses are pretty much inside the loop.
Yeah, and what's the advantage of that raised house over a slab, would you say?
Well, first of all, flooding comes to mind, but it's also the look. When you stand at the street and you see a raised porch, you see the steps and the handrails, it gives the house a lot of character, and it makes it come alive versus a static house that's just flat on, a slab.
Yeah.
Not to say that a slab house doesn't have curb appeal. A raised house tends to have a little bit more curb appeal just because of the details.
Yeah, I've never thought about that before you said it, but it's true. It's all the exterior things that you can do with the raised house that makes it so dynamic looking.
The other
3-dimensional sort of.
Yeah, the other piece of it is if you ever had to get under work on plumbing or anything like that, you have access to under the house, which that adds cost. Raising the house, you have to insulate, you have stairs, you have porches, you have skirting around the house, flood vents, etc. So those are some of the reasons why those houses are more expensive than I'd say a house out in the suburbs or outside, just slab foundations where they're in big neighborhoods.
So let's change gears here a second. What type of things, when a consumer is looking to engage with a home builder, what kind of questions should they ask, and what type of things with associations, and what are they looking for other than just years in business?
I think their very first question should be, how do you work? What's your process for building? If the first question is, what's your price per square foot? It usually starts off on the wrong foot, because that's the wrong question to ask. You really want to know if you have a good relationship with this person to go down this path. And so
talk about like a different processes or different philosophies of different builders, if you can.
Such as?
Like you mentioned the process of building. That's one of the questions they should ask. How would you answer that question to a consumer?
The process of building, well, to see if you're a good fit with that builder, and if you do have good chemistry, then you can move to the next step, which is to identify an architectural designer and go down the path with that. As for us, we try to be engaged in that design process to keep the house within budget and the whole project within budget. And so that's, I guess, the first step is to see if you're a good fit with the builder, and then disclose your budget to the builder so you can at least realize if you're on the same planet or not.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize when I built my first home, I had no idea how many decisions you make.
Yes.
But you're making hundreds. Everything from doorknob to hinges to cabinet fixtures to cabinet. There's a million decisions you're going to make during that process.
And that's another piece of the puzzle, is to start early with an interior designer, to have them as part of the design team. So we typically like to have the architectural, whether it's an architect or a designer. We have an engineer that's part of the team. We have the contractor, which is kind of the conductor of the symphony. We kind of keep everyone in line. And then we also have the homeowner that is making the decisions. We use a software program called Builder Trend, which has all the choices that the clients need to make, and it's all laid out. It's connected to our calendar, so
nice.
So everything's ahead of schedule. It's never, hey, we need these decisions today. It's usually weeks or months in advance that they know what they need to be looking for. So
very nice. That keeps the workflow moving, and you're not losing days. And how hard is it today with obviously the labor shortage? How hard is it today to keep contractors working?
I've got a great team. I've worked with these guys for a long time. We've been in and out of a lot of projects. So it's instead of having like a 5 or 6 man framing crew, I might have a 2 or 3 man framing crew. Same with the painters. The crews are still there. They're just smaller. And so it takes longer, the duration.
It's also, I would think, one of the benefits Sabo Custom Builders offers to their client is it's your relationship with these people. They're not like somebody you're hiring just to frame their house and then they're going to go on to some other builder, but you have a relationship with them, and they're going to respond to you because of future work, I would think. It's
a strong relationship. Most of these companies are smaller mom and pop operations. I mean, they're real companies, but the relationship's usually with the owner of the company, and I have the relationship with the owner.
Yeah, well, you've educated me about the software. That wasn't around 15 years ago when we were building. So what other changes do you see coming down the pike in custom home building?
There's been a real big focus on energy efficiency, water management, building science. I come from Texas A&M, graduated in '96 with a construction science degree, and it's just been a continuing education since that point. And there's a focus on air quality inside, so the houses being tighter and tighter, less air changes, water management, making sure any water that might get through a leak or something, or driving rain that has a pathway out. We started using drainable house wraps this year to let any water that gets in to get out. And so it helps improve the longevity of the.
When you say a drainable house wrap, is that like the Tyvek that I'm familiar with that goes after you framed a home and a consumer will see the white stuff wrapped all around the house, and so now they got drainable product?
Correct. And so it creates an airspace, a gap behind there. It's typically 3/8 inch, and so it has a way for the water to get out and to dry. Because back in the day, we used solid wood products. Now everything's engineered products. OSBs and things like that. So if a house got wet in the old days, it dried out just through natural, aspiration and stuff. But now it's everything's man-made, so it's glues and adhesives. So you got to keep it dry.
Very interesting. And nothing mess up house like water.
Nothing like water that creates mold and other issues.
All the kind of problems that come where I've had that experience with a couple of homes I've owned. It's like I've learned the older I get, keep the water away from the house.
Exactly.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about the type of the building process, but what is the 3-bid rule? Talk about that a little bit.
Back in the day, the industry's sort of changed. It's over time. It used to be, hey, I'm going to go get a set of drawings, and I'm going to send it out to 3 contractors. I'm going to get 3 bids, and I'm going to go with the lowest price. That's probably an older way of thinking. We like to focus more on a collaborative approach where we start early on with the client so we can get in and help them develop the budget if they don't have a budget in mind. But I've received $900,000 worth of drawings with a $300,000 budget. So, and it frustrates everyone because it's they've spent money and time on their dream house, and then they now have just a real nice set of drawings that they can't really build.
Yeah. So it's such a relationship type business. I mean, it's just so imperative to have the relationship.
And it's you want to build and earn their trust up front, and that's why I always in the beginning I ask clients, if you like if you like the person, interview them, because we're interviewing the client just like they're interviewing us. And if it's not a good fit, life's too short. I'd rather just part as friends and let them go down that path with someone else.
Yeah. So we all love these stories. Home builders don't, but we all love them as consumers when the news pops up and there's some horror story. Tell us about a horror story or two that you've experienced or seen, or maybe you picked up the pieces of some consumer that didn't do their homework when they were hiring a custom builder.
I think Harvey was probably one of the biggest horror stories. Everyone's familiar with that. I met so many people that had issues, and then I've unfortunately read about people that paid contractors and the contractors didn't perform. I helped out my past clients that had flooded houses, including my mother, and we fixed them up, but we were unable to help the masses in Houston. So that was one of the pieces that I guess I want it to help more, but I mean, I was able to do all that I could, but that's the biggest horror story I could think of. I mean, the other.
And when people are, I've heard of stories of, contractors disappearing after certain parts of the phase, but talk to us about how draws work and how you get paid during the course of the project so that you can not only pay your suppliers, but also the guys doing the work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk a little bit about that.
So at the very beginning of the project, when the construction contract starts, we take a commencement fee, and that commencement fee is to purchase materials and get the project started. As a builder, we don't use our money, we use the bank's money to build your project. So we do not cash flow that. So we take a commencement fee, and then as the work progresses, it is done on a draw schedule, and that schedule is identified at the contract phase. So there's a certain line item for foundation, for underground plumbing, for framing, level 1, level 2, etc. So all the way through the project. So it's defined on paper up front what the fee schedule is.
And then so you just submit some kind of request to the bank, and when the work's completed, and then that money's released to you.
Yes, we submit that to the bank. They typically send an inspector out there, and the inspector verifies that the work's in place. And this is bank inspector, not city inspector.
Yeah.
And they once it's approved, the homeowner signs it, and the money's released to us, and then we pay all the trades and the vendors.
Fantastic. And then give some advice. Is any advice you might have to the consumer that's looking to engage a home builder?
Stay off HGTV.
It's not just how the internet has changed the world; it's how what's it called? DIY projects. Thank you, Daniela. They've changed everything, haven't they?
They have. I guess interview a few builders, find out a good fit, have realistic expectations, educate yourself a little bit on what things cost. I mean, you can go to Home Depot or Lowe's if you want. You can go to Ferguson's and get appliance quotes and get a sense of what you want, at least on the front end, and find out if that builder's really a good fit for you or not.
Where do you see people putting money that they usually don't recoup, like on a resale? Is that a fair question, or maybe we could flip that question around? Where should people put money to make sure that they get their return on their investment? On their
kitchens and baths, and I'd say the primary kitchen and the master bath is where I would put the most bang for the buck. Kids, I mean, secondary baths and stuff, I don't think they're as particular about the materials, and you're not going to get dollar for dollar back on a secondary bath. Yeah. But your kitchen's always, the appliances, the countertops, the finishes. We're using a lot of quartz these days. So those are nicer countertops and finishes.
Very cool. Well, a lot of great information here. Really appreciate you coming in. Before we leave, tell us how to reach the audience, how they reach you to talk about home building if they want, either by phone or email.
Well, our best way to reach us is to go to our website, www.sabocustombuilders.com, and the adventure starts there. Yeah. Fill out the contact form. We'll get back in touch with you, and we will start the process.
That's awesome. You have chosen to build your business with some networking. How's your experience with Network in Action been? It's
been awesome. We enjoy the meetings and enjoy just learning about networking and other businesses. I'm here for the others so I can learn from them just as they can learn from me.
That's awesome. We really appreciate you coming in today.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.